Mushoku Tensei has three main sword styles: the North God style, the Water God style, and the Sword God style. Starting with the Sword God style, it's the most aggressive style. Its core principle is to make the first move win as quickly as possible. It's also thought to be the strongest of the three. Another thing is that if you reach the Saint rank, you're given this fur-trimmed jacket, the one Ghislaine always wears. I thought it was just her fashion style, but Galfarion the Sword God and Eris after she became a Sword Saint also wore one, so I think it's some sort of tradition. Because the whole mentality is striking first, a handful of Sword God style users become short-tempered. Since these swordsmen must react quickly, they're advised to wear a minimal amount of clothing. It's all about the speed. But then a contradicting thing are the fur jackets. They would create more air resistance whilst moving. Given the information that we have about the Sword God style, even a fraction of a second would be critical. Let me know what you think about this. The different moves or techniques that we've seen in the series from the Sword God style are the arm chop, which is a basic technique. Like the name implies, it's aimed at the forearm to either cut it off completely or break the opponent's bones. I think that's quite smart, because if the opponent is unable to hold their weapon, victory is almost guaranteed. Unless they can regenerate using healing magic, then it becomes a problem. Then we have the Longsword of Silence. When you reach advanced rank, you should know this move. The user puts everything into one attack and moves at the speed of sound to cut their enemy. Another thing I must mention, humans in the six-sided world of Mushoku Tensei are not the same humans on Earth. They have more stamina, speed, and strength, hence why these moves that require extreme speed and strength are possible. Then we have the Longsword of Light. To qualify as a Saint rank, you need to be able to execute this technique. The user holds the sword and puts everything into one swing. It's very hard to defend against this technique. The force is strong enough to cut through heavy armor like butter. Because of this technique, the Sword God style is known as the strongest style. No other style has such a strong technique, especially taught at the Saint rank. So if you imagine 50 Sword God Saints versus 50 Water or North Saints, the Sword God style Saints would dominate. It's such a powerful technique. Then you may think, what if two Sword God style users are fighting and they both use the Longsword of Light? Do they both die? Well, that's why they've made a counter move called the Light Reversal. At the same speed as the Longsword of Light, you need to cut the opponent's hand off before their attack reaches full speed. It's combining the arm chop that I mentioned before and the Longsword of Light. It will only succeed if you've reacted faster than the other side. So if two Sword God style users are fighting, then the fastest one will win. In the story, we don't see mention of other moves that are taught at the king or above rank, so I'm thinking they just train the hell out of the Longsword of Light and refine it even further. Starting from the top, the ranks in this school are Sword God. This person is the strongest in the style. The Sword God oversees all the training in the dojo, and to become the Sword God, you have to prove that you're stronger than them, either by killing them or making them admit defeat in a fight. Another option is if the Sword God dies from old age or is killed by an outsider, the next strongest user becomes a Sword God. A Sword Emperor is one rank below God. To become one, you need to defeat another Sword King in a fight, where the Sword God is the witness. Then you have the Sword King. Once you reach this rank, the Sword God will let you choose a sword from their collection. This is also the rank that Ghislaine is on. Moving down, you have Sword Saint. Here you need to be able to control your battle aura, or Toki as they call it, completely. Everyone in the world of Mushoku Tensei has mana. High-ranking swordsmen use mana to strengthen their bodies and weapons. For example, Paul used it unknowingly to cut a boulder with a wooden sword in Season 1. The second requirement of being a Sword Saint is to be able to use the Longsword of Light. Then we have the Advanced rank. When you're at this level, you have to have control over your battle aura and need to be able to use the longsword of silence. We saw Eris use this in the OVA episode against the assassins. At the intermediate rank, you need to have somewhat control over your battle aura and have been learning the foundations for about 3 years. Lastly, we have the basic rank. Basically, someone that's a newbie and is practicing all the basic techniques at least 1,000 times. Moving on to the Water God style, there is actually an origin story about it. Long ago, there was a country by the sea. It often faced attacks from the Water Dragon King, a powerful creature that didn't like the fishermen coming into its territory. The dragon would even attack the port town, causing a lot of trouble. The knights of the country tried to fight the dragon, but it was so big and could move easily in the water, so they couldn't defeat it. The country was on the verge of being destroyed. The king decided to offer his crown and his daughter's hand in marriage to anyone who could defeat the Water Dragon King. Many brave knights and heroes tried, but they were all torn apart by the dragon. It seemed impossible to beat. Then a man named Ryder came forward. He looked messy and poor and didn't seem very important, so people didn't think he could do anything. Even the king doubted him. But Ryder was actually very strong. He froze the surface of the ocean to stop the dragon's movements, but it eventually broke free and attacked him. With his old sword, Ryder fought back and cut off the dragon's head with one powerful strike. He returned to the king with the dragon's head. The king was impressed and offered him a big reward, but then Ryder asked for the princess's hand in marriage. The king refused. Ryder wasn't angry, but he felt very sad because he had always loved the princess from afar. He could have become king very easily, but he chose to leave the country instead. The princess got angry at her father for not giving Ryder what he deserved. She hit the king and then left the castle to find Ryder. She caught up to him as he was leaving the country and begged him to take her as his wife. She said she didn't care about being a princess anymore and didn't want to stay in the country if she couldn't be with him. Ryder held her in his arms and they left the country together. They eventually got married and disappeared. Years later, the Water God style was born in different parts of the world. And based on Ryder's story, a tradition started where the spouse of someone who practices the Water God style would leave their own home just like the princess did. The Water God style is focused on defense. Its main goal is to parry and counter-attack incoming strikes. Since there are limited ways to attack, practitioners also use provocation to make their opponents act first. This would definitely work on Sword God style users because they stereotypically have a short temper. A skilled user of this style can sense the flow of magic and block any attack, including magic ones. However, the Water God style has a weakness. It cannot initiate the attacks, which makes it vulnerable against the North God style that relies on sudden attacks, trickery, and adaptability that are difficult to anticipate. Some of the moves that we know about of the Water God style are Flow. This is a basic technique, and once you master this, you should be able to counter any incoming attack. And the Water God style has 5 secret techniques that you need to be able to know at least 3 to qualify as a god. We're shown a combination of the 2 secret techniques by Ryder, the current Water God in the story. The user stays in a position and anything in their vicinity that moves is sliced at will. It's quite aggressive but sticks to the core of the Water God style since the user is only responding to the changes in their environment. The ranks are the same as the Sword God style and there can only be one Water God. Lastly, we have the North God style. The principle of the North God style is to stay alive, have the highest chance of winning the fight. Different North God style schools teach different techniques. So in one school you can learn to fight with an axe, whilst in another you can learn to fight with knives. To be a good North God style user, it depends on how much adaptability you have. Are you able to fight at night with one arm, on the floor, without a sword? This style is popular with mercenaries and adventurers because at the end of the day, they care about surviving. You can't defend your honor when you're dead, so this style makes the most practical sense. Although different schools may teach different fighting techniques, they all teach some of the fundamentals. The sword throw is a move where you literally throw the sword very hard and fast. It's good against magic attacks as well. For example, in Season 1, Rudius's fireball was cut in half. The four-legged form makes the user a smaller target and keeps them low on the ground. Paul used this in the Melis continent when he was fighting Rudius, not knowing that this panty-wearing pervert is actually Rudius. Then you have the Hazy Cross. When two sword users clash against each other, the North God style user will let go and in that split second draw their second weapon to cut their opponent, which is actually quite clever. Their ranks are the same as the other schools, but there can be multiple North Gods. As long as everyone or a large group acknowledge your strength, you can qualify as a North God. An interesting thing that the author Rifujin mentioned is that Ruijerd's strength is equivalent to a North Emperor, which is just one rank above God. The North God style is actually my favorite style because the user aims to win no matter what. Probably the most scariest style because you don't know what the heck they have hidden. Poison, dozens of weapons, a prosthetic arm, and whatnot. Let me know which of these is your favorite and why.